In the far reaches of the galaxy, there are horrors that scream, rage, and devour. Orcs roar across battlefields. Tyranids swarm in endless hunger. Chaos twists reality itself. But among these terrors, there is one enemy that inspires a different kind of fear: silence. The Necrons do not shout. They do not bleed. They do not speak. They come with no warning, no mercy, and no chance of survival. When a Necron world awakens, it is as if death itself has risen from the ground. Tomb complexes buried for millions of years stir to life, their ancient gates splitting open as legions of soulless warriors march forth. Whole cities feel the echo of their awakening as power flickers, the ground trembles, and the air grows heavy with static. Civilians look to the skies, only to see vast monoliths phasing into existence, their green light casting everything in the hue of decay. Unlike other enemies, the Necrons do not fight for conquest or glory. They fight for a harvest. They see humanity not as soldiers, not as enemies, but as resources to be collected and erased. Against their living metal bodies and devastating Gauss weapons, the Imperial Guard's lasguns may as well be toys. Resistance is not brave. It is futile. This is the story of what happens when the Necrons invade a world in Warhammer 40K. A story of silence, annihilation, and a fate worse than death itself. Chapter 1. The Awakening Tombs. For millions of years, they slumbered, beneath the crust of forgotten worlds, deep within mountains, deserts, and barren plains. Vast tomb complexes lay hidden. Entire civilizations rose and fell above them, never knowing what slept below. To the people of these planets, the ground was solid, unchanging, but in the galaxy of Warhammer 40K, nothing lies dormant forever. The Necrons are patient beyond comprehension. Where orcs bellow and charge, where tyranids consume with hunger, the Necrons wait in silence, and when they awaken, it is never by chance. Sometimes it is the mining drills of the Imperium, burrowing to deep. Sometimes it is seismic activity, stirring machinery that has been still for eons. And sometimes the Necrons themselves decide the galaxy has forgotten them long enough. The first signs of awakening are subtle. Civilians notice flickering lights in hive cities, machinery failing for no reason, Vox signals filled with static. Seismologists record faint tremors, though no earthquakes follow. Priests whisper of unease, their prayers met with silence. Animals flee the land, birds vanish from the sky. Something ancient shifts beneath the surface. And then, without warning, the tomb begins to open. The ground shakes as enormous monolithic gates grind apart. Dust and rock fall away, revealing walls of impossible black stone etched with glowing green glyphs. Air that has not tasted life in millions of years spills forth, cold and suffocating. The sound is not thunder, not an explosion, but a low mechanical hum, a vibration that rattles bones and chills the soul. From the darkness, the first Necron warriors emerge. Skeletal, metallic forms step in perfect unison, their eyes glowing with an eerie emerald light. They do not speak. They do not hesitate. Each movement is deliberate, precise, inevitable. Where orcs stampede and tyranids swarm, the Necrons march like a machine, a tide of living metal advancing with no sound but the hiss of ancient servos. For those who witness it, the terror is unlike anything else in the galaxy. Orcs inspire rage, tyranids inspire panic, chaos inspires madness, but the Necrons inspire despair. There is no fury, no passion, no weakness in them. They rise without emotion, without purpose beyond extermination. To see them is to realize that humanity is nothing, not an enemy, not a rival, not even prey, merely dust in the wind of history. As the warriors advance, their overlords awaken. Massive constructs of living metal, lords and nobles with inhuman intelligence, step from their tombs. Their bodies are adorned with ancient glyphs, their weapons humming with power that predates the Imperium itself. Their gaze pierces through flesh and spirit alike, a reminder that humanity's entire empire is but a child compared to their dynasty. And above them, the sky itself begins to change. Vast monoliths phase into orbit, colossal pyramids of obsidian drifting silently into position. Their presence blots out the sun, casting whole regions in a green twilight. Each one is a fortress, a warship, and a factory of annihilation all in one. For the people on the surface, it is as if the gods themselves have descended, not gods of salvation, but gods of death. The first attack is not fire or bloodshed. It is silence. Vox networks collapse. Communications vanish. Entire cities are cut off from one another in an instant. Panic spreads like wildfire, as governors and generals find themselves blind. They do not know where the enemy is, how many there are, or what they want. By the time they realize the truth, it is already too late. The Necrons do not announce their war. They do not roar or boast or threaten. Their invasion begins with the simple, unstoppable march of their warriors. Streets once filled with civilians are emptied in moments, families vanishing as emerald light floods the avenues. Guardsmen who try to resist find their last guns useless, their armor crumbling under Gauss fire that strips flesh and bone molecule by molecule. The awakening is not a battle. It is an inevitability. The tomb has opened, and death has risen. For the Imperium, it is the beginning of another doomed campaign. For the Necrons, it is merely the next step in a process millions of years in the making. And for those who live on the world, it is the end. The awakening of a Necron tomb is not the start of a war. It is the erasure of a planet's history. A reminder that in the galaxy of the 41st millennium, even time itself is a weapon. Chapter 2. Silent Aravel Thorks announce themselves with a thunderous wog. The Tyranids with a storm of wings and screeches. Chaos with the unholy roar of the warp. But the Necrons, they arrive in silence. And that silence is more terrifying than any sound of war. When a Necron invasion begins, there are no drums, no horns, no proclamations. The sky does not burn immediately, nor does the ground shake with armies charging. Instead, reality itself begins to fracture. Entire cities look upward in confusions, as the sky ripples like disturbed water. Then, with a flash of emerald light, the monoliths appear. They do not descend with fire. They phase into existence, impossibly vast pyramidal warships materializing out of nowhere, defying the laws of physics. One moment the horizon is clear. The next, it is blocked by a towering monolith of black stone, glowing runes carved into its impossible surface. The air hums with static as entire fleets emerge without sound, blotting out the sun. On the ground, civilians panic. Priests scream of divine punishment, claiming the emperor has abandoned them. Governors and officers scramble to make sense of the phenomenon, sending reports that are garbled with static and cut short mid-sentence. Vox channels collapse as Necron interference spreads across the planet. One by one, the voices of command fall silent, until only fear remains. And then the warriors come, without a word, without even the sound of boots on the ground. Legions of Necron infantry phase directly into the streets of cities, into the barracks of soldiers, into the homes of civilians. One moment, the street is filled with life. The next, it is filled with death. Metallic skeletons stand where children once played, where merchants once sold their goods, where families once gathered. The silence is absolute, broken only by the faint hum of ancient servos and the eerie crackle of Gauss weapons. Warming to life, panic erupts, but it is already too late. Civilians run, only to vanish in bursts of emerald energy, their bodies stripped apart at the molecular level. Guardsmen open fire desperately, lasgun beams flickering across the metallic forms. The shots spark, flare, and die harmlessly against living metal. The Necrons do not flinch. They do not slow. They march forward, each step deliberate, unhurried, inevitable. The Imperial Guard is trained to face terror. They have stood against orcs, Tyranids, and worse. But against the Necrons, their courage falters. What do you do when your enemy feels no pain, makes no sound, and cannot be killed? What do you do when you realize the battle was lost before it began? The commanders order artillery strikes, desperate to halt the advance. Shells rain down, detonating in massive explosions that shake the earth. For a brief moment, hope flickers until the smoke clears, and the Necrons stand exactly where they were, untouched, unbroken, marching still. Every Imperial defense collapses. Vox operators scream into dead channels, begging for aid. Commissars execute deserters on the spot, trying to hold discipline. But their pistols mean nothing against despair this deep. Civilians flood the streets in chaos, only to be cut down in silent emerald beams. Families cling to each other as Necron-flayed ones emerge, claws dripping, bodies clad in the skins of their victims, their silence broken only by the sound of tearing flesh. The worst part is not the destruction, it is the inevitability. Against orcs, you can kill enough to hold them back. Against tyrannids, you can pray for exterminatus to end the swarm. Against chaos, you can at least die knowing your faith was tested. But against the Necrons, there is no defiance. There is no victory. They come without hate, without hunger, without anger. They come because it is what they were programmed to do eons ago. In that silence, guardsmen and civilians alike realize the truth. They are not fighting soldiers. They are not even fighting monsters. They are fighting history itself, ancient and inevitable, marching forward with cold precision. The Necrons arrive without sound, without mercy, without hesitation. And when they do, the world is already lost. Chapter 3. The living metal armored defenders of the Imperium often whisper that the Emperor protects, that even in the darkest hour, faith can hold the line. But when the Necrons rise, faith shatters. For what protection can there be against an army that is not alive, cannot die, and has already fought wars before humanity even existed? The Necrons are not an army of men, nor beasts, nor demons. They are machines of living metal, forged from technology so ancient it borders on sorcery. When their warriors march into the light, the defenders of the Imperium see not enemies, but their own graves. At the heart of their ranks are the Necron warriors, skeletal figures of blackened metal. They advance with perfect precision, their glowing emerald eyes fixed forward, their Gauss flares humming with deadly energy. Each weapon is a relic of destruction, capable of tearing matter apart molecule by molecule. Flesh, stone, and steel disintegrate under their beams, leaving behind only dust and ash. To be struck by Gauss fire is not to die instantly, but to feel your body unravel, nerves burning as you are erased from existence. Behind the warriors march the immortals, larger, stronger, their bodies armored in thicker plates of living metal. They wield heavier Gauss blasters, their firepower tearing through tanks and fortifications with ease. Where warriors overwhelm through endless ranks, immortals obliterate anything that dares to resist. To face them is to face inevitability itself, an enemy that does not falter, does not retreat, and cannot be broken. And then there are the constructs. Monoliths drift across the battlefield like obsidian pyramids, their surfaces alive with shifting green glyphs. They open portals mid-air, teleporting entire squads directly into the heart of the enemy. Their particle whips fire beams of destruction that can level entire blocks with a single strike. To the Imperial Guard, a monolith is not a target, it is a death sentence. Alongside them stalk the destroyers, once Necron nobles, now fused into half-machine, half-hovering engines of annihilation. They swoop over trenches, raining down Gauss fire, their bodies twisted by obsession with destruction. To them, war is not duty, it is hunger. They exist to kill, and they will not stop until everything before them is reduced to dust. But perhaps most horrifying of all is the resilience of the Necron army. To shoot one down is meaningless. A guardsman may empty an entire Laskan magazine into a single warrior, finally watching it collapse only for the broken metal to twitch, to rise, to reform. Living metal seals wounds, reconnects severed limbs, rebuilds shattered bodies. Soldiers scream as the enemies they thought destroyed rise again, silent and relentless, marching forward as if nothing had happened. Even tanks, artillery, and orbital bombardments mean little. Lemon rust battle cannons thunder across the lines, demolishing swords of Necrons in clouds of smoke and fire. But when the haze clears, they are still there, burned, battered, but reforming. For every one that finally stays down, 10 more phase in to replace it. The Guard's greatest weapons are little more than a delay. The psychology of the Necron army is as deadly as their weapons. They do not shout, they do not roar, they do not bleed. Their advance is marked only by the hiss of Gauss fire and the crunch of boots on bone. This silence eats at the soul of defenders. Orcs can be outmatched with greater violence. Tyranids can be annihilated by firestorms. Chaos can be resisted with faith. But how do you resist an army that does not acknowledge your existence beyond the efficiency of extermination? Commanders shout orders, commissars scream for courage, but the Guard knows the truth. They are not holding a line. They are standing against time itself. Each Necron that rises is a reminder that humanity's empire is a flicker compared to the eternal dynasties of living metal. When the Necron army arrives, it is not a battle. It is not a war. It is a correction, a machine of history erasing what was never meant to exist. Against such power, the Guard does not fight for victory. They fight only to delay the inevitable, to buy a few more moments of life before the green light takes them to. This is the living metal army, silent, relentless, eternal. And when they march, worlds fall. Chapter 4. Collapse of defense when the Necrons awaken. The Imperium responds, as it always does, with faith, orders, and the promise of sacrifice. Planetary governors call for martial law, the Ostra Militarum mobilizes, and commissars spread the Emperor's holy wrath. Artillery is wheeled into position, trenches are dug, and the people are told that humanity's might will hold the line. But faith means nothing against eternity. The collapse of defense begins not with a single battle, but with 1,000 small defeats. Vox signals are scrambled, cutting regiments off from their commanders. Entire battalions are deployed blindly, not knowing that the Necrons have already phased in behind them. When orders do arrive, they come too late. Legions of guardsmen are already surrounded, already erased in emerald fire. At first, the Imperial Guard fights bravely. Lines of infantry unleash volleys of lascum fire, the red beams streaking across the night sky. Artillery shells explode in thunderous barrages, turning entire fields into oceans of fire. For a heartbeat, hope flickers. For a moment, it seems that the Guard may hold. Then the smoke clears. The Necrons stand unharmed, their ranks reforming with perfect precision. Warriors rise from craters, limbs reconnecting, bodies knitting together. Monoliths drift forward, particle whips obliterating tanks in molten flashes. Immortals march unbroken, their Gauss blasters cutting through walls, armor, and flesh alike. The Guard's greatest weapons achieve nothing. Tanks try to stem the tide. Lemon rust battle cannons roar. Basilisks thunder from the rear lines. But Gauss fire slices through their armored holes like paper. Entire squadrons of armored vehicles vanish in waves of emerald light, their crews screaming only for an instant before being reduced to dust. Air support is no better. Thunderbolt fighters streak across the sky, missiles screaming toward Necron constructs, only to detonate harmlessly against shifting shields. Return fire erupts in cold green beams, slicing through aircraft in silence. Smoking wreckage rains upon the Guard below, crushing trenches and scattering defenders. The commanders respond with desperation. Orders for counterattack are given. Commissars execute those who hesitate. Entire regiments are thrown forward in suicidal charges. Thousands of guardsmen climb from their trenches, screaming the Emperor's name, bayonets fixed. They charge the metallic tide in a frenzy of desperation. It is slaughter. Gauss fire sweeps across the field, reducing charging soldiers to clouds of dust. Those who reach the Necrons thrust bayonets uselessly against living metal, only to be torn apart by cold, skeletal hands. Entire regiments are erased in minutes, their sacrifice achieving nothing but another line of corpses across the battlefield. Commissars bellow in fury, executing deserters, but even their bolt pistols cannot kill despair itself. Civilians add to the chaos. Cities erupt in riots as terrified families flood the streets, desperate to flee. Transport ships are overwhelmed, tens of thousands crushed in stampedes. Those who manage to board are slaughtered as monoliths phase into the skies above. green energy beams vaporizing entire evacuation fleets in orbit. There is no escape. There is nowhere to run. It is not sudden. It is steady, inevitable, like the ticking of a clock. Every hour, another regiment disappears. Every day, another city is lost. By the time reinforcements are called, there is nothing left to save. The Necrons do not need speed. They only need inevitability. For the soldiers on the ground, the collapse is not just the loss of territory. It is the loss of hope. They see their weapons fail, their commanders executed, their comrades erased. They realize the truth no commissar can deny. The Necrons cannot be stopped. The war was lost before it began. For the soldiers on the ground, the collapse is not just the loss of territory. It is the loss of hope. They see their weapons fail, their commanders executed, their comrades erased. They realize the truth no commissar can deny. The Necrons cannot be stopped. The war was lost before it began. EF. That humanity has any place in a galaxy already claimed by deathless kings of living metal. Chapter 5. Terror among civilians. Imperial Guard may die in trenches, but it is the civilians who suffer most when the Necrons invade. Soldiers at least expect death. Civilians live in denial, clinging to hope that their faith, their leaders, or the Emperor himself will protect them. But when the Necrons arrive, hope dies first. The terror begins quietly. Cities fall silent as power grids fail, Vox networks collapse, and the skies darken under the shadow of monoliths. Families huddle in their homes, whispering prayers, clutching relics, trying to believe they will be spared. Some rush to shrines, filling temples with desperate voices. Others try to flee, flooding the streets with carts, vehicles, and terrified screams. The roads choke with bodies long before the enemy arrives. And then the Necrons appear. They do not storm the city with roaring engines or bombardments. They simply phase into existence. One moment the street is full of people. The next it is full of skeletal warriors. Emerald light floods the alleys, Gauss weapons humming, their beams cutting through flesh and stone alike. Civilians vanish in clouds of ash, their screams silenced before they even end. Panic consumes the population. Mothers clutch children and run, only to see them disintegrate in their arms. Families are separated in stampedes, the weak trampled beneath the feet of the desperate. Priests who moments before preach salvation are vaporized mid-sermon, their holy relics falling into dust. But the worst terror comes not from the warriors, but from the flayed ones, emerging from the shadows, their bodies draped in the torn skins of their victims. The flayed ones hunt with grotesque hunger. They stalk alleys and basements where survivors hide, their claws dripping with gore, their silence broken only by the wet tearing of flesh. Civilians hear the screams of neighbors, see the blood-stained figures dragging corpses away, and know it is only a matter of time before the hunters come for them. Every attempt to escape fails. Shuttles crowd the spaceports, desperate families begging for passage. But monoliths hang above, their beams slicing through the skies, vaporizing ships mid-flight. The lucky die instantly in green light. The unlucky fall burning back to the surface, crashing into the very crowds they tried to escape with. The governors lie to maintain order. They promise reinforcements, whisper of our starts coming to save them. But the people begin to see the truth. No space marine arrives. No fleet breaks through the blockade. The Emperor does not answer their prayers. The realization spreads like plague. They are a lone dot in desperation. Some turn to madness. Cults form in the chaos, claiming the Necrons are gods. That survival lies in worship. They drag civilians from hiding places as sacrifices, begging the silent machines for mercy. The Necrons give none. The cultists are harvested like all the rest. Others fight back with desperation. Civilians arm themselves with hunting rifles, makeshift blades, and stolen lasguns. They form barricades in streets, huddled together, waiting. When the Necrons come, they fire wildly, screaming in fear. The result is always the same. Emerald beams reduce them to dust, leaving only charred weapons clattering to the ground. The terror is not just in death. It is in the realization that the Necrons do not even acknowledge them. Orcs slaughter for joy, Tyranids consume for a hunger, Chaos kills for madness. But the Necrons do not kill out of malice. They kill because it is efficient. To them, civilians are not people. They are numbers, resources, molecules to be erased or harvested. This indifference crushes the spirit. Even in their final moments, civilians realize they are not fighting monsters, not resisting an invasion. They are being erased by history itself, by an empire so ancient and vast that humanity's existence means nothing. And so, entire cities vanish. Where once millions lived, only silence remains. Streets are empty, homes abandoned, temples desecrated. The voices of children, the prayers of the faithful, the cries of the desperate all reduced to dust beneath the cold green light. The terror among civilians is not just death. It is the death of memory, of identity, of existence. For when the Necrons come, they do not leave behind survivors, stories, or hope. They leave only silence. Chapter 6. The harvest begins when orcs invade. They seek battle. When tyrannids descend, they hunger. When chaos strikes, they seek corruption. But when the Necrons arrive, their purpose is colder, more terrifying. They do not come to conquer, nor to consume. They come to harvest. The harvest begins with precision. Cities fall silent, their populations already scattered or destroyed. Streets once filled with life are now empty, except for the metallic legions standing in perfect formation. Then the true machinery of the Necron dynasty awakens. Monoliths hover over districts, their runes glowing brighter, vast portals opening in their obsidian flanks. Emerald beams sweep the streets, not to destroy, but to collect. Entire crowds are engulfed in light and vanish without a trace, their bodies teleported into the heart of the tomb complexes below. They are not killed outright. They are taken deep within the earth. In halls of black stone, the process begins. Civilians and soldiers alike awaken in cages of green light, suspended between reality and nothingness. There are no guards, no jailers. There are only machines, ancient and incomprehensible. Mechanical arms dissect the living with surgical indifference, stripping them apart molecule by molecule. Some are converted into raw energy, their bodies fueling the awakening tomb. Others are experimented upon, their screams echoing endlessly as they are tested, altered, or broken. The flayed ones take their share. They drag the living into the shadows, peeling flesh from bone, adorning themselves with bloody trophies. For them, the harvest is madness, a compulsion that drives them deeper into horror. Survivors whisper that to be killed by a Gauss weapon is mercy compared to the claws of the flayed. But the true terror of the harvest is its scale. The Necrons do not select the strong or the weak. They do not care for age, faith, or loyalty. Entire populations vanish indiscriminately. Infants, elders, priests, nobles, and soldiers all are swept into the same process, all equal under the cold logic of ancient machines. The Imperium's response is futile. The Guard attempts desperate counterstrikes, charging into harvest zones to save civilians. They are annihilated instantly, their deaths adding to the chaos. Commissars bellow orders, demanding sacrifice, but even their executions cannot hold discipline when guardsmen see their comrades vanish in beams of green light. What is courage against inevitability? What is duty against eternity? From orbit, Imperial fleets attempt bombardment. Lance strikes hammer the planet, shells fall like rain. Yet the monoliths stand unharmed, their shields flickering but never failing. The harvest continues as if nothing had happened, the Necron army indifferent to the thunder of Imperial wrath. The most horrifying aspect is the silence. No screams escape the harvesting machines, no cries echo from the void. Cities vanish without noise, entire continents erased without battle. Records disappear, populations vanish, history itself is stripped away. When the harvest ends, there is nothing left to even prove that people once lived there. To the Necrons, this is not cruelty, it is order. The galaxy is theirs by right, and humanity is nothing but an infestation to be cleared, processed, and removed. To the victims, it is worse than death. Death at least leaves a body, a memory, a legacy. The harvest leaves nothing. You are taken, broken down, erased, as though you never existed at all. Those few who escape speak of nightmares, endless halls filled with silent machines, rows of disassembled corpses still twitching with life, human voices trapped in eternal static, their souls screaming in green light. They speak of the cryptex, the Necron scientists who perform experiments older than the Imperium itself, dissecting humans not for knowledge, but for ritual, for purposes no living mind can comprehend. And when the harvest is complete, the Necrons do not linger. The Monoliths close their portals, the machines fall silent, and the legions march back into their tombs. They vanish as suddenly as they came, leaving behind only empty cities, silent plains, and skies washed clean of life. This is the harvest of the Necrons, not a war, not a conquest, an erasure, a cleansing of existence so thorough that the galaxy itself forgets a world ever existed. Chapter 7. Desperate last stand when the Necrons harvest. Resistance is meaningless. Armies are shattered, cities are erased, and hope dies in silence. Yet even in this inevitability, the Imperium demands one final thing from its soldiers and citizens: to die standing. For in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, surrender does not exist. The orders come from planetary governors, their voices trembling over broken Vox networks. Hold until the last man. Reinforcements are coming, but the Guard knows the truth. Reinforcements will never arrive. No Ostart strike force burns through the sky. No fleet of the Emperor breaks orbit. They are alone. Still, they fight, not for victory, but because the Imperium leaves no other choice. In the ruins of hive cities, guardsmen dig trenches in the shadow of toppled spires. Civilians are pressed into service, given lasguns that barely function, told they now serve the Emperor through sacrifice. Commissars pace behind the lines, bolt pistols ready, ensuring no one falters. Families, children, the elderly, all are herded into barricades of rubble, transformed into soldiers for one final stand. The Necrons advance with their usual precision, emerald eyes glowing through the smoke. Their weapons hum, their formations perfect. Against them, the defenders are chaos, shattered regiments, starving civilians, half-trained militia. But their defiance burns bright. If only for a moment. The last stand begins with fire. Heavy bolters rattle from ruined towers. Missiles streak into the skies. Lasguns roar in desperate unison. For a fleeting instant, the defenders feel a surge of pride. They see Necron warriors stagger under the weight of the barrage. They dare to believe they are holding. Then the green light comes. Gauss fire sweeps the barricades, disintegrating men, women, and children in waves of emerald death. Monoliths drift forward, particle whips blasting through fortifications, turning whole blocks to molten glass. Immortals march without slowing, their blasters tearing apart heavy tanks as if they were toys. Flayed ones drop from the shadows, rending screaming civilians apart, with claws slick with gore. The lines collapse almost instantly, yet the Guard fights on. Platoons charge into the Necron ranks, bayonets raised, prayers on their lips. They are erased before they even strike, but more charge after them. Commissars scream orders, executing the hesitant, dragging men forward by sheer terror. Each guardsman knows they will not win, but they fight anyway, because to do less would invite a bolt round to the skull. Even the civilians resist. Families throw Molotovs into the advancing tide. Gangs of children with knives rush screaming into warriors of living metal. None survive, but for a heartbeat. Their defiance flickers against the endless dark dotting command bunkers. Governors beg the fleet for exterminatus, the Emperor's mercy of obliteration. Better for the world to burn in holy fire than fall to the Necrons. But the Vox remains silent. The fleet has already withdrawn, writing the world off as lost, and so the defenders realize the truth. No salvation will come. Their sacrifice will not be remembered. Their world will not even remain on the star charts of the Imperium. They are already forgotten, yet still they fight, because to fight is all they have left. On the final day, the last defenses crumble. The trenches are filled with corpses, the barricades ground to ash. A handful of guardsmen remain, bloodied, broken, standing in the ruins of their city. They fire their last lascan shots into the green tide. Knowing the beams mean nothing, they charge with bayonets, screaming prayers that will never be answered. They fall one by one, erased into dust. The last man dies, as the first did, screaming the Emperor's name, defiant against inevitability. His body vanishes in green light, leaving nothing behind. The world falls silent once more, the harvest complete. This is the desperate last stand of humanity. Not a battle for victory, but a gesture against eternity. Against the Necrons, it does not matter. But for the soldiers and civilians who fight, it is the only thing left, to die on their feet, in the Emperor's name, even as history itself erases them. Chapter 8. A world forgotten one. The last gun falls silent. When the final scream fades into ash, the Necrons remain. Their march does not quicken, nor does it slow. They continue until there is nothing left to harvest, nothing left to erase. And when that moment comes, they do not linger. They vanish as silently as they arrived. The world is dead, though not in the way the Imperium understands death. Orcs leave wreckage and blood. Tyranids leave bones and hollow shells. Chaos leaves madness and corruption. But the Necrons leave silence. Entire cities stand empty, their streets littered with abandoned possessions, but no bodies. Halls echo with the absence of life, temples with unanswered prayers. It is as if humanity never walked there at all. In the ruins of once thriving hive spires, banners of the Imperium still hang, tattered by the wind, proclaiming loyalty to an emperor whose people are gone. Vox units hum with static, relaying no voices. Machines rust in place, their operators erased. The silence is suffocating, a blanket that smothers even memory. Deep below, the tomb complexes seal themselves once more. The Necron legions march back into the dark, vanishing into their eternal crypts. Monoliths phase out of orbit, slipping silently into the void. The skies clear, the ground stills, and the green glow fades. The invasion is over. The world is claimed. And the galaxy does not notice. The Imperium has already written the planet off as lost. Administrators strike its name from star charts. Records are sealed. Its people declared extinct. A governor somewhere makes a note. No further resources to be wasted. World abandoned. That is the extent of remembrance for billions of souls. In the centuries to come, some may stumble upon the ruins. Explorers, smugglers, or even soldiers may land on the surface of the silent world. They will find abandoned cities, untouched homes, food left rotting on tables, doors still ajar. They will find relics of lives cut short, children's toys, prayer books, journals. But they will find no graves, no corpses, no survivors. The world is not merely dead, it is erased, and beneath the surface, the tombs slumber again. The Necrons are patient. They have harvested before, and they will harvest again. Whether it takes years, centuries, or millennia, they will rise once more. For to them, time is irrelevant. Humanity may forget. Empires may rise and fall. But the Necrons endure. For those who study history, this is the greatest horror of all. Worlds lost not to fire or corruption, but to silence. Records vanish. Archives are altered. Memories fade. Entire civilizations are consumed and then erased, as though they never existed. What is more terrifying than death? To be forgotten. The galaxy is full of horrors. Orcs rampage, Tyranids devour, chaos corrupts. But the Necrons do something worse. They erase. They strip away not just life, but memory, legacy, and truth. Against them, victory is meaningless, for even remembrance itself can be stolen. And so the world lies silent, its name lost, its people erased, its history forgotten. The Imperium will fight on elsewhere, never sparing a thought for the billions who perished. The Necrons will slumber, awaiting their next harvest. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, death is everywhere. But when the Necrons come, there is something far worse than death. There is oblivion. Outrar's story of a Necron invasion does not end with fire or triumph. It ends with silence. No banners raised, No last cries of victory, no heroes remembered, only a dead world, empty cities, and the eternal slumber of machines that wait patiently for their next harvest. For the Imperium, such losses are routine. One more world struck from the records, one more population forgotten. Administrators will mark it as a failure, generals will curse the emperor's enemies, and priests will insist the sacrifice was holy. But in truth, the people are gone, not only dead, but erased, their existence stripped from history itself. That is the true power of the Necrons, not conquest, not annihilation, but oblivion. And what of the survivors? If any escape, their tales are dismissed as madness. Who could believe in silent armies of living metal? Who would accept that humanity's empire is not supreme, but fragile before an enemy that existed before mankind drew breath? Their warnings are ignored, and the cycle continues. The galaxy forgets, until the tombs stir once more. This is the grim reality of the 41st millennium. To live under the Imperium is to live in constant fear. To die in war is certain, but to face the Necrons is to suffer something worse than death. It is to be forgotten. In the end, when the green light fades and the tombs close, one truth remains: against the Necrons, there is no victory, only silence.